It's 2023, and barely a week has gone by this year without hearing about another train derailment.
A runaway train derailing in the Mojave Desert, causing a mangled mess.
Today, another train derailment, this time in rural Maine.
Norfolk Southern train derailed right here in Pittsburgh.
So what the heck is going on? And is anyone doing anything to try and stop it? We spoke to rail workers who are blowing the whistle about what's gone wrong, talked to the senator leading the effort to take on the greed of the railroad industry, and dug through lobbying reports and campaign finance disclosures to understand how railroad companies are trying to stop Congress from passing legislation to fix this mess. It certainly won't be easy. Getting Congress to do anything, especially when it requires Republicans and Democrats to work together to take on a powerful industry, is nearly impossible. But finally, we could be close to a breakthrough.
When we let corporations run the economy, workers and their families always pay the price.
That's Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio. He's seen firsthand the impacts that these derailments have on communities.
When a 1.5 mile long Norfolk Southern train derailed just outside of town and started spewing toxic chemicals into the air, the water, and the ground, and up into the lives of so many Ohioans in this small, tightly knit community of East Palestine. They're worried about whether their water is safe to drink, whether the air is safe to breathe, whether their kids will get sick, all because of a train derailment caused by a corporate culture of cutting corners.
When I talk to rail inspectors, they tell me that they're being forced to ignore safety concerns and send trains down the line, even with defects like melted bearings, the cause of the East Palestine disaster. When I talk to engineers and conductors, they tell me how concerned they are that fewer and fewer people are tasked with operating trains that are only getting longer and more dangerous.
I was a third-generation railroader. I first hired out in 1974. Back when I first hired out, we had 5 men on a train. Now they're down to 2, and they're trying to go to 1.
Back when Jeff was operating trains, they were typically less than a mile in length. Today, the rail companies are regularly sending super trains down the line, which is essentially 2 trains connected together, resulting in the average train length being about 2 miles long now.
Keep in mind, on a locomotive, it's not like driving a truck, driving a car, and they expect you to be on a train for 12 hours by yourself, without anyone there, without the ability to stop, stretch your legs, get coffee, listen to an audiobook to keep you awake, nothing. So having a second person in the cab on these long runs is specifically a way to stay more alert and attentive.
Despite the ongoing battle waged by workers to establish a mandatory 2-person crew on these trains, the rail industry is pushing back hard, doing everything they can to cut down to a single crew member per train for the sake of profitability. And what do they do with all those profits? Spoiler! They aren't reinvesting in railroads.
Norfolk Southern invested much of its massive profits in making its executives and its shareholders wealthier at the expense of workers and at the expense of Ohio communities along its rail tracks. The company followed the Wall Street business model. You boost profits by eliminating, in their case, 38% of its workforce over 10 years. Then you spend $3.4 billion on stock buybacks last year instead of investing those dollars in workers and investing in safety. They don't care about these communities and the damage they do, as long as they still bring in enough revenue to reward their executives.
So is anyone trying to bring an end to this madness?
Ohio Senators Sherrod Brown and JD Vance are co-sponsoring bipartisan legislation called the Railway Safety Act of 2023.
This might be one of the few bipartisan areas in modern history where we might actually be able to get something done.
The Railway Safety Act would do several key things. First, it includes new safety requirements for trains that carry hazardous materials. It would mean new rules to prevent wheel bearing failures, the #1 mechanical cause of derailments. And it would raise the fines on companies when accidents happen.
And what about those proposed 1-person crews?
The bill would require just 2-person work crews on every train.
Rail workers have been calling for this for years. But despite the fact that Democrats and Republicans are finally working together on this common sense safety regulation, getting it across the finish line still won't be easy.
For decades, the railroads have enlisted the help of corporate lobbyists and politicians who do their bidding to undermine safety rules.
What we have to get to the bottom of here is the question of, will the corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats acquiesce to this bill after heavy lobbying by the railway industry?
A few clicks on opensecrets.org and you'll see that the railroad industry spent nearly $25 million lobbying Congress last year alone. And over the last 4 years, railroad companies have spent a staggering $100 million. We dug into the lobbying disclosures and found that the Association of American Railroads the industry lobby group, are spending millions of dollars trying to prevent new rail safety regulations from becoming law. Union Pacific spent over $1 million lobbying Congress on issues related to crew size, safety, and track inspections in the first quarter of this year alone. And even after the disaster we watched unfold in East Palestine, Norfolk Southern is working to kill rules requiring two-person crews.
Will you commit to a two-person crew on all trains?
Senator, we're a data-driven organization, and I'm not aware of any data that links crew size with safety.
Now, they're zeroing in on the Railway Safety Act and doing everything in their power to water it down or block it altogether.
It's time for the railroads to spend more on safety, even at cuts a little into their profits. Time and time again, they've shown their willingness to cut corners in order to save a buck. Workers and the public be damned.
The railroads have spent millions of dollars trying to influence lawmakers. Now, as Sherrod Brown and other members of Congress consider changes to stop train derailments, the industry's corrupt investments will be put to the test.
Shouldn't take a train derailment for elected officials to put partisanship aside and work together for the people whom we serve, not corporations like Norfolk Southern. It's a pretty simple question at stake in everything we do in these jobs. Whose side are you on? Do you stand with wealthy lobbyists, or do you stand with communities like East Palestine? Do you stand with big corporations, or do you stand with small businesses? Do you stand with Wall Street, or do you stand with workers? It's the same fight over and over and over. Senator Vance and I come from different parties, but we've come together for the people of our state. We've introduced this legislation. We've pressed federal officials to take legal action. Congress needs now to pass the Railway Safety Act.